Hey yo, what it did, y'all? Let's get right into it. It's time to talk about a pet build of mine, actually. About a year ago, in ToTA, I had this fantastic idea because I saw Controlled Blaze got added to the game. I was like, I should play Infernal Blow Ignite. And that character sucked. It was cool. It looked really nice while mapping, especially with Aurea's End and all of the Ignite works and whatnot. But that character was an Ignite Elementalist. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes the character is more carried by the shell that it's built into than the actual skill that you are using. And that's what I felt back then. I no longer feel this way about this build. The changes that we got this patch to melee because of the melee like massive overhaul that we got actually tremendously buffed this character to the point where the damage that I have in my day 2/day 3 setup is already higher than what I had in my fully invested aura stacking version of the character in ToTA. And that's concerning because I thought the character was honestly kind of fine and okay, meaning barely there, but I would not be surprised if this character became a mainstay without potential fucking adjustments to the character's potency in future leagues. So that's why I wanted to talk about it with you guys here, because I'm just excited to share a build that, I tried once when it was horrible, and now it looks like it's going to be like a very real thing. So before I get into that, look, if you like these type of videos, like the video, it lets me know that you want to see more, right? And if you really recommend your boy, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you know when I am posting more, right? Y'all know the deal. Now, let's get into it. So, the main thing is that, well, it's Infernal Blow. Take a look at the gem real quick. Realize how much damage this has gained, right? This gem was buffed in its added damage effectiveness by 127%. That's not an additive number, by the way. That is like 127% more damage. It is insane how much damage this gem gained, and that's actually the main reason that I came back to look at this, because we didn't use War Chief or Protector before. The only loss that we took in the things that got removed that these buffs were supposed to be in compensation for was the flat damage on the gem. And the flat damage nerf loss hurt, but I mean, not nearly as much as we gained, right? Because we weren't affected by Protector or War Chief before. So huge buff there, right? That's one thing that made this come back, right? And because the damage from this part comes back in such strong force, we can make some changes in other places to actually make the character not the squishiest thing I've ever put together, outside of like literally stacking an unbelievable amount of money into its budget. Let's talk about what makes the build work together, right? Because Infernal Blow got buffed, and you can do this in a number of ways, but the way that I find to be the best, and quite frankly, the coolest, is through the unique weapon that we are featuring in this build, Story of the Vault. Story of the Vault is an incursion unique. It comes from one of the rooms, don't actually know which one, but it's an unupgraded unique. You don't actually need a vial to get your hands on this if you're an SSF player who wants to try this build out as well. Story of the Vault is just an unupgraded item, and it provides one very important line: ignites inflicted with this weapon deals 50 to 75% more damage. Obviously, get that roll as high as you can, especially like in the 72 plus range. You quite frankly cannot compete with this weapon. Even if I were to try using various two-handers, I've tried, it's really hard to even almost hold a candle to this weapon's damage for this build in particular. Now, we said Story of the Vault. Looking at the rest of this weapon, it's got a lot of stats we need. It's a moderately fast weapon. It comes with accuracy to help us actually hit. It also has the hits always ignite, freeze, and shock line, which is very amusing because we actually do not need this line, unfortunately, because we do not need the ignite chance, right? We're an Elementalist. But what we are really also using Elementalist for is Shaper of Flames. Always ignite, invalidates one of these lines, but the ability to ignite with all damage is very important because Story of the Vault has very low damage, especially when you think about melee ailments, you think two-handed weapons for the insane amount of flat that they can get. So to compensate, we just use various sources of flat elemental damage, such as Anger, Smite, Southbound are the ones that are featured in this build. You can also add in Herald of Thunder, for example, or Wrath at higher and higher investment points, etc. There are a lot of ways to just add in a ton of flat damage to this character to then not really feel the fact that this is a one-handed sword we're using. And that's what really pulls this whole thing together offensively. Additionally, I want to cover the defenses because I don't need to go over the offenses from there, to be honest. The offenses from here are just standard Ignite package stuff, right? Iadian Dawn is a really big upgrade. Eye of Malice is insane. Curse stacking is insane. Polaric Devastation, right? Like you're familiar with the Ignite package, right? And well, or maybe you aren't. And I just kind of named it for you, and it'll be on screen. You weren't familiar with it, but like it's a standard Ignite package. We'll cover that more in the PLB section to like actually see all the various pieces of the Ignite package. But the main thing that really makes this build stand out is the way the Story of the Vol functions. Then additionally, we built in some defenses. Not the most insane level of defenses or anything, but still tankier than the character was when I originally made this back in ToTA. We are using Cloak of Flame with Fizz conversion, as well as a slew of 25% defensive auras, because the 50% defensive auras do not work for us, right? Remember, we're using Cloak of Flame. We have no ES to really scale up Discipline. We have no armor and no evasion. So where are we actually getting our defenses from? Cloak of Flame converts damage. We use Sappho's Frame to further mitigate that converted damage, and as well take some max res on the tree to further mitigate that converted damage. Then we slap on Flesh and Stone, which is newly buffed, and it's gonna feel fucking fantastic. Arctic Armor to give us freeze immunity, as well as some more PDR when we are attacking already, and then adding in Tempest Shield to bolster the spell block from Sappho's Frame to make us just a little bit safer against spell damage. Additionally, we have a source of endurance charges, only for mapping from Aggressive Bastion, giving us a 25% chance to get that on kill, which basically means all the time as far as I'm concerned. It's going to make the character feel much, much safer as we map. Now, there's some other nitty-gritty details about how the character is put together, and we're going to go into the POV section here. Before I do, though, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer and reminder. One, right? This is pre-league start, right? We have not actually played in the changes. There's always a possibility that things just might be bugged, and that will always bother me. There's also just the possibility that the game is tuned to be harder than we expected, and we might need to make tweaks. So do be prepared to maybe need to, ask some questions, or ask questions or make adjustments on your own. And to that end, right, this is my reminder that there is a Twitch and a Discord in the description, right? You can come into the Discord and ask about these things. You can be in the comments and ask about these things. You can come to my stream and ask about these things. All of the above are options there. Anyways, over to the POB so you can actually see some of the details of how the character functions. Let's move. Quickly go over the POBs. I'm going to show you 3 here. I've made a couple other versions, but I think these are the 3 that I feel like are the most succinct for you to look at. We're going to look at first this one here, which is what I plan on considering to be the end of like base progression. This is specifically referring to being able to do like a T17 to get my map device unlocked and all of that stuff, right? Like this is, quote, the end of initial progression. It's a little of a weird term, but like that's what we're calling this version. In here, you'll see standard pathing on the tree. Up around, take generic fire damage notes. I do reach for a lot of masteries for fire masteries. That's exposure is really strong. This regen is insane. And pops are pops, so I feel like that's a gimme. You can even go one further here if you want the refresh on crit, but I didn't think that was particularly useful. But it is something to consider. You can also consider even like not going up here for this fire mastery to get it down, to get the mastery here and save points elsewhere. Right? If you're wondering why I'm not right side like I was in my original version of the build, if you are familiar with my original version of the build from in ToTA, I originally went to Whispers of Doom. I decided that the +1 curse is not actually necessary anymore to do what I need to do damage wise. And you might be thinking my damage looks a little low, but I'm going to show you why in a moment here when I get to the gear section. A couple other key features of the tree do include that I am spec'd into minion nodes, spiritual aid, and spiritual command, as that provides with a lot of damage and a lot of attack speed. The attack speed is super essential for this build. I learned this back in ToTA when I played, because you cannot actually use multi-strike with this skill. It bricks the interaction. So you actually have to run attack speed in a lot of it. And previously I aura stacked to get there. This time, because I don't actually need to aura stack for my damage, I'm able to do it in a slightly different format, and I chose to do it with the minion nodes and just a couple other minor tweaks to the character's gearing priorities to get it there. Additionally, we go left side instead of right side towards like curse, maybe some suppression investment, because max res is now available here, which is really nice. You'll notice we have 82 81, 82. You could go 82 all if you just take the small passive here. as well as access to endurance charges through aggressive bastion for mapping. I do not value endurance charges very highly for bossing because I'm a softcore player, and I shouldn't be. If I get hit, I get hit. It is what it is. But I also just shouldn't be getting hit. And then, coming down here for life, this mana mastery here is very, very nice, considering it's actually a useful node all the way around, as opposed to having to take something like deep thoughts, like I usually do for the mana mastery, as we just need that to make our mana comfortable. That's the tree. Again, outside of that, fairly standard stuff, I feel, so I'm not going to cover that in too much detail. I do want to cover the items, though, because I mentioned the DPS a little bit ago, and I think you need to see that I'm wearing a Brightbeak in this POV, because Brightbeak is fast as fuck, just straight up, and so we are a big fan of Brightbeak. But the actual weapon for this build is Story of the Vaal. Story of the Vaal is the item, as I mentioned in the intro, that really inspired this build when I came up with it a year ago. And Story of the Vaal plus the addition of Controlled Blaze is really what put this all together for me. And so, of course, Story of the Vaal is the actual centerpiece weapon, really skyrockets our damage. But I noticed that the mapping damage was very, very fine on a Brightbeak. So I'm pretty happy to use a Brightbeak as my actual weapon for mapping purposes. Other than that, you'll notice Cloak of Flame, very standard item. A lot of standard Ignite items actually in here. Cloak of Flame, Eye of Malice, Deity, and Dawn. One thing about using Cloak of Flame, by the way, Cloak of Flame, you will almost guaranteed need to get a corrupted one so that you can tainted chrome it, because Infernal Blow is a lot of red, right? And rolling red on a pure blue base, even though it's a low int base, is still kind of difficult. So corrupting this might need to be a part of your plan. Maybe your luck is a little bit better than mine. I've usually needed to corrupt and just tainted chrome this to get it in position. Otherwise, standard gear in a lot of other places. Min frenzies, because min frenzies are good and stuff like that. We don't need min endurance charges because we already have it for mapping, and I told you I don't really value it for bosses. As far as the skill setup goes, there's one more key feature here, because I talked about conversion, and you'll notice my Fizz hit is pretty decent for not even having a guard skill up and not actually having all my buffs in play, as we are running Anger, Tempest Shield, Flesh and Stone, and Arctic Armor. So we don't have Arctic Armor ticked in here. If I am actually stationary, my max hit goes up by a ton, but I don't take it because I'm not always attacking, and I want to make sure I'm safe in all situations. As well as we are running the new Flesh and Stone, as I was already pretty high on Flesh and Stone in previous iterations of this gem, and now that it's as strong as it currently is, I don't see a reason not to run it. It is a hell of a gem. 20% Fizz DR, against close range enemies. Melee attacks are really terrifying. It sucks I won't get this mitigation against ranged enemies, but I think it'll be fine either way. And Tempest Shield is a bit of an optional reservation for defense. I just like the idea of having spell block. Spells are scary. If you don't like spell block and shock immunity, Herald of Anger, or Herald of Anger? Really? Herald of Thunder is a perfectly viable option here for more damage. I just thought it was overkill, so I didn't do that. We run Precision on Arrogance. This is not really an optional thing. It's a little weird. You just have to trust me on this. You will need to get a little bit more accuracy while playing with Brightbeak, though, because Brightbeak does not come with the natural accuracy that a sword such as Story of the Vaal comes with. And you'll want to get some accuracy rolls on one of your rings or something as well to help out with accuracy. Maybe even just take another accuracy node somewhere or something like that to get a little bit more. Which this is tweaked in a couple other versions. I've done so many POBs that I'm sorry if it's not perfect here. The one you see in the comments will be right. There's just been a lot going on here, including things like changing this to Leap Slam, because I've played around a lot with Whirling Blades and Leap Slam. I prefer Whirling Blades personally while using Story of the Vaal, but Leap Slam is a better movement skill and is usable with both Story of the Vaal and Brightbeak, so you don't actually have to adjust that too much when playing between weapons. But yeah, that's a lot of the stuff for this version here. We're now going to roll over to the upper end investment version of the build, so to speak. Story of the Vaal, or again, can map on Brightbeak. Doesn't really matter either way. The investment on this is a little bit higher. You'll notice a lot more of my items are now uniques. I included Aureus because I know that's going to be one of the last purchases I make for this character in particular. Otherwise, I didn't even mess with the tree really to add clusters or anything, because I don't know if I think it's necessary, so to speak, because the real focus on this version of the build is just moving into more speed farming, using Polaric Devastation to recover some of the damage that we lose in other places when I make some of these changes, such as getting Ignite Prolif on my gloves as well as the exposure. Ignite Prolif is very nice for the pops that we have in the build between Aureus and then the Fire Mastery for Explode, And then otherwise, like again, a lot of the same stuff. Alls is in here just so I can get haste in. Literally, that's all it is for. It literally is just a haste alls or some way to get haste in because I do value the speed that haste would provide me. I guess again, attack speed feels good, and getting through my mouse faster is kind of the main goal of this character. Otherwise, not a whole lot is really like different in this version of the build. And now let's talk about the starting version. Starting version, these supports are an absolute mess, and it's just I was testing a lot of different 4-link setups and whatnot that I like here. And what I found is support, like Control Blaze is by far one of your best single target supports. It is just a little awkward if you use in the mapping with something like Ignite Prolift. Like me personally, for mapping, I would love to have a link setup that looks like this, just 2 red, 2 blue, so I could Ignite Prolift and mapping. But it's not the end of the world if you can't do that. If you can't do that, you know, it is what it is. You even might want Cruelty for mapping instead. Like it really could go any way on the links for mapping purposes. The other major adjustments that I want to talk about with the day one version, again, tree's kind of the same. Like I didn't really touch the tree too much because I realized I just really liked this basis point, and I'm using this character to farm currency more than anything. And so the major differences that really line up are my defenses. In this iteration, it is using Determ instead of Arctic Armor and Tempest Shield, and then using a Glorious Plate because I am a little concerned about the ability to actually equip and use a Cloak of Flame early on, as well as also purchasing it because, you know, Ignite just might be that popular that people are, you know, everybody's rushing to Cloak of Flame because of the mitigation changes, whatever it may be. I just wanted to hedge bet a little bit and use Glorious Plate. Use a Glorious Plate instead, but it does hurt our Fizz Max hit a good bit. You might want to get a more pure armor shield, maybe pure armor on the helmet and boots as well. Stuff like that to like help hedge out your defenses. Of course, we still have access to endurance charges while mapping, but it's just not the same, not as bulky as the version once you do get Cloak of Flame in here, and so you're going to want to put a pretty good priority on that item. Otherwise, there's only one thing left to talk about across all 3 versions of this POB, which is my choice of Infernal Blow versus Infernal Blow of Immolation. Infernal Blow, again, I'll mention it in the intro as well, but Infernal Blow is better for clear as the explosions on the gem, right, will then ignite, and that's going to help your clear a ton. But for pure single target, Immolation is going to be stronger. That is the difference between the 2 gems, by the way. Infernal Blow at base has a corpse pop on the enemy that is debuffed, as opposed to Immolation, which does not, and it's just more focused on debuff popping damage. So that's the difference between the 2 gems, which does mean Immolation is stronger in single target, but I really like Infernal Blow for just general mapping. Also, this damage you are seeing here is, again, with a Brightbeak on the league starting version, because I just think it's so cool how strong Brightbeak really is for this character. Lots of slots to get your accuracy fixed in and whatnot. And again, if you get your hands on a Story of the Wall, your damage goes up to a ridiculous height, even on a 4-link. That doesn't even include Control Blaze. Like again, if we switch Control Blaze in, we are now chilling at 2.7 on a 4-link. Granted, got to down level gems a little bit, and also, you know, full level 95 tree and everything, but like this damage is insane for this level of investment. I do very heavily prioritize Southbound here, even in all variations, because it should be kind of cheap, even with the Frostblades Akata basis setup that's going around for using this to really cheat out damage there as well. I think this glove is just generally pretty common, and it's a very high value glove. Also, now let's talk about some alternatives, just in case some things are a little too expensive, or you just like are looking for a quick upgrade in places where you cannot get easy access to these items. You know, I pray to the Lord that I'm not popular enough to make Story of the Wall that expensive, because that's gonna hurt me, right? But if Story of the Wall is too expensive for you, items like Rebuke of All are a slight downgrade in damage. Again, Brightbeak is perfectly viable, or just getting a like an elemental damage Siege Axe. You can use a variety of weapons in this position. I just chose a Siege Axe because it's, you know, it's fast. You can also, instead of a Siege Axe, use a sword, like literally just a one-handed sword to get the accuracy implicit as well. That's another option. You have a couple options in terms of weapon there. If you cannot get your hands on Southbound, that's fine. Use a regular rare glove. Try to get flat on it if you can. Attack speed as well. It's pretty helpful. And then you can see the alternatives for all the other slots. There are a couple other upgrade options that you can get into when you start to go on the higher end of the build. One of them being, Death Rush. If you want a more like offensively or like juicing focus approach to the character, I recommend getting Anathema instead of Death Rush to add to your curse limit. And we would use those curses actually to run potentially even like a corrupted southbound with Enfeeble and Ellie Weak. And it is specifically both of those curses. Because Ellie Weak, of course, is Ellie Weak, but I really like Enfeeble as a way to add defenses to your character. Like, I'll just show you very quickly. Keep an eye on the max hit, right? Like, we're at 11.8 right now. If I switch over to Anathema and then switch my gloves over to Southbound, our Fizz max hit goes up to 13.1, as well as then giving me even, that's just because of Enfeeble's like little bit of DR that it does apply even at level 1. It's about like 5 or 10%, which is pretty nice, but it is only the targets you've hit, so it's a little shaky to use it like as a sole means of defense unless you were to like put it on an aura, but that's for other builds that I haven't. Okay, anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. I just wanted to show you guys this character that I was very excited to be able to update because of the insane buffs that it got. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or any optimizations. I'm pretty sure that I'll end up making tweaks to this as it is going. I get more and more ideas, because this was hastily just updated because I was like, wow, the character's so much stronger than it was when I initially played it. Anyways, if you like this, liking the video really helps. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Also, in the description, I do have a Twitch and a Discord, right? Discord, if you want to come chat with me there when I'm not streaming, but I will be streaming a little bit this week, but especially when we get to the league start, I will be streaming the entirety of that weekend, basically, as well as, some regularity beyond there, so come check it out as well. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.